When people talk about builds in Conquest of Azeroth, the conversation almost always comes down to one thing. What's the strongest build? What's the highest DPS? What's the fastest dungeon clearer? What's the current meta? And while those are all fair questions, I think a lot of players are asking the wrong one. Because here's the truth. The strongest build isn't always the one you'll enjoy the most. Some builds can top the damage meters, but after an hour or two, they start feeling repetitive. On the other hand, some builds might not be sitting at the very top of every tier list, but they're incredibly satisfying to play. They have flashy abilities, smooth rotations, great mobility, or just that feeling where every fight makes you think, okay, one more dungeon. And honestly, those are usually the builds people end up sticking with. So today, we're putting raw numbers to the side for a moment. Instead of talking about the strongest builds, we're talking about the most fun builds in Conquest of Azeroth. These are the builds that keep combat exciting, reward practice, and make you look forward to logging in. Let's get started. What makes a build fun? Before we jump into specific builds, let's answer one question. What actually makes a build fun? The answer is different for everyone. Some players love huge critical hits. Others enjoy fast-paced gameplay with lots of buttons to press. Some want constant movement. Others enjoy carefully planning every cooldown. There are players who love watching giant groups of enemies explode all at once. And there are players who enjoy slowly mastering difficult mechanics until everything becomes second nature. That's why this isn't a traditional ranking. I'm not saying one build is objectively better than another. Instead, I'm focusing on the builds that consistently leave players smiling after a dungeon, instead of immediately wanting to re-roll. Build number 1, the Speed Demon. Let's start with a build that's perfect for players who hate standing still. If you're the kind of person who loves constant movement, quick reactions, and always having something to do, you'll probably love fast-paced builds. These builds feel incredibly fluid. You're constantly weaving abilities together, repositioning, managing resources, and reacting to what's happening around you. Combat rarely feels repetitive. Instead, every pull feels slightly different, because your decisions matter. The downside, these builds usually demand more attention. If you stop paying attention, you'll notice it immediately. But if you enjoy staying engaged every second of combat, they're incredibly rewarding. Build number 2, the Walking Explosion. Now let's go to the complete opposite. Maybe you don't care about speed. Maybe what you really want is watching massive numbers appear on your screen. This type of build is all about setting up huge moments. You spend a little time preparing, then unleash everything at once. When it works, it's one of the most satisfying feelings in the game. Seeing an entire group of enemies disappear because you timed everything perfectly never gets old. These builds teach patience. You learn that sometimes waiting 5 extra seconds gives you a much bigger payoff than using every ability immediately. If you're someone who enjoys planning ahead, you'll probably love this playstyle. Build number 3, the Unstoppable Solo Build. Not everyone spends most of their time in groups. Some players enjoy exploring the world alone, running quests, farming materials, taking on difficult enemies without relying on anyone else. For those players, survivability becomes just as important as damage. That's where these solo-focused builds really shine. They're designed to keep moving, fight longer, recover quickly, and handle situations that would overwhelm many other builds. You don't constantly worry about every pull. Instead, you play with confidence, knowing you have the tools to survive unexpected situations. That feeling of independence is exactly why solo builds are so popular. You aren't waiting for a healer. You aren't searching for a group. You simply pick a direction and start making progress. For many players, that's one of the most relaxing ways to experience Conquest of Azeroth. Those first 3 builds are fun for completely different reasons. One is all about speed. One is all about huge burst damage. And one focuses on surviving almost anything the game throws at you. But the next few builds become popular for an entirely different reason. They're simply satisfying. Every ability feels impactful. Every fight feels rewarding. And they're the kinds of builds that make it very easy to lose track of time. Build number 4, the never-ending AoE machine. Let's talk about one of the most addictive playstyles in the game. AoE-focused builds. If you've ever rounded up a huge pack of enemies, pressed a few abilities, and watched everything disappear, you already know exactly why these builds are so popular. There's something incredibly satisfying about controlling large groups of enemies instead of fighting them one at a time. Every pull feels like a small puzzle. How many mobs can you safely gather? When should you use your cooldowns? How long can you keep everything under control? Good AoE builds reward confidence. The better you become, the larger your pulls get. And the larger your pulls become, the more satisfying every fight feels. It's one of those playstyles where you constantly find yourself saying, just one more pull. Build number 5, the unkillable tank build. Not everyone enjoys chasing huge damage numbers. Some players get far more satisfaction from refusing to die. If that's you, tank-oriented builds are incredibly fun. There's something rewarding about walking into a dangerous pull, watching enemies throw everything they have at you, and barely seeing your health move. Good tank builds completely change how you approach the game. Instead of avoiding danger, you become the player everyone else follows. You're setting the pace, choosing the pulls, protecting your group, and making difficult encounters feel manageable. Of course, tanking comes with responsibility. People naturally expect you to know the route, understand mechanics, and make good decisions. But for many players, that's exactly what makes the role enjoyable. You aren't just another damage dealer. You're leading the group. Build number 6, the support build everyone loves. Support builds rarely top damage charts. They usually aren't the first builds people talk about on YouTube. But ask experienced players which teammates they enjoy having the most. And support-focused players almost always get mentioned. These builds make everyone around them stronger. You help your group survive, increase their damage, control dangerous situations, and sometimes save an entire dungeon run with one well-timed ability. The funny thing is, you often don't realize how valuable a support player is until you run a dungeon without one. If you enjoy helping your team succeed instead of chasing personal numbers, support builds are surprisingly rewarding. Build number 7, the high-skill build. Now let's talk about builds that demand practice. These aren't necessarily beginner-friendly. You'll probably make mistakes, miss cooldown timings, mess up your rotation, and wonder why everyone else makes it look so easy. But then, something clicks. Your rotation becomes natural. Your movement improves. Everything starts flowing together. And suddenly, the build feels incredible. That's what makes high-skill builds so addictive. Every hour you invest feels meaningful. You can actually feel yourself becoming a better player. They're not always the easiest builds, but they're often the most rewarding. Build number 8, the relaxed build. Not every player wants an intense rotation. Some people play after work, after school, or simply to relax. For those players, low-stress builds can actually be the most enjoyable. You aren't constantly watching timers, managing dozens of abilities, or worrying about perfect execution. Instead, combat feels smooth, comfortable, consistent. These builds let you focus on exploring, talking with friends, or simply enjoying the world without feeling like every fight is a test. And honestly, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Sometimes the most fun build is simply the one that lets you unwind. Transition. So far we've talked about speed, burst damage, solo builds, AoE, tanking, support, high-skill gameplay, and relaxed playstyles. But before we finish, there's one thing I think every player should remember when choosing a build. And honestly, it might be the most important point in this entire video. The best build isn't always the most popular. Before we wrap up, I want to mention something that I think a lot of players forget. The most popular build isn't automatically the most enjoyable build. It's easy to open a tier list, see what's ranked at the very top, and immediately assume that's what you should play. But that doesn't always work. Think about it. If a build has an incredibly complicated rotation, and you don't enjoy that kind of gameplay, you're probably not going to stick with it. The same goes for slower, methodical builds. Some players absolutely love planning every cooldown. Others just want fast-paced action and constant movement. Neither playstyle is wrong. They're simply made for different people. That's why I always recommend trying a build for yourself before deciding it's not fun. Sometimes, a build looks boring on paper, but feels amazing once you're actually playing it. And other times, a build everyone recommends just doesn't click with you. That's completely normal. Choose a build that matches your personality. So, if someone asked me, how do I pick the right build? My answer wouldn't be, just copy the meta. Instead, I'd ask a few questions. Do you enjoy moving constantly during combat? Do you like seeing huge burst damage? Do you prefer surviving almost anything? Do you enjoy helping your teammates succeed? Do you want a relaxed playstyle? Or something that constantly challenges you? Those answers tell you much more than any tier list ever could. Because at the end of the day, you're the one who's going to spend dozens, maybe even hundreds, of hours playing that build. So choose something that keeps you excited every time you log in. If a build makes you think, I can't wait to run another dungeon, you've probably found the right one. Final thoughts. One of the biggest strengths of Conquest of Azeroth is the variety. There isn't just one way to enjoy the game. Some players love topping the damage meters. Others enjoy protecting the group as a tank. Some players want to support everyone around them. Others simply enjoy exploring the world with a build that feels comfortable and reliable. That's exactly why conversations about the most fun build are always interesting. Everyone has a different answer. And honestly, that's a good thing. Because it means there's a build out there for almost every type of player. So don't be afraid to experiment. Try something different. Test new abilities. Swap talents. You might discover a playstyle that's even more enjoyable than the one you thought was perfect. And remember, the build that keeps you logging in every day is usually the best build for you. So those are some of the most fun builds you can play in Conquest of Azeroth. Now it's your turn. Which build do you think is the most fun, and why? Maybe it's because of the fast-paced gameplay. Maybe it's the huge burst damage. Maybe it's because you can solo almost anything. Or maybe it's simply the build you've enjoyed the most over the years. Leave your answer in the comments. I'm always interested to see what the community enjoys, and your recommendation might help another player find their next favorite build. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like. It really helps the channel. And subscribe for more Conquest of Azeroth content. I've got plenty more videos coming, including class guides, build breakdowns, gold farming guides, mythic dungeon tips, profession guides, leveling strategies, and tier lists. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you in the next Conquest of Azeroth guide.